qualitative study, we want to keep it scientific. How? Following the scientific process. You remember when we defined it, it's a what? Scientific process. Anything outside that scientific process, it ceases to be a scientific research into its objective end. Then there is bias. Once it becomes objective, there is bias, and we cannot classify it as a scientific quantitative study. All right. Okay. Let's quickly move on. Then let's go on to indirect effect. A simple example, right here. Organizational support leading to employee satisfaction and employee job performance. Right. I am involved in an accident, or my wife in a problem and I can't pay the bills. The company says, no, it's fine. We can advance you some money to attend to your wife and your family. Right? When all is fine, you can come back to work. Right? That's organizational support. I am in a problem and there's no one to help me, but my organization come to my rescue at the time of need. Are we together? So that support can lead to your satisfaction. No, I can't leave this organization because it is always there for me when I need it most. Are we together? When my friends run away, always my organization stands by me. Are we together? So you say, no, I am satisfied. I won't leave. Then because you are satisfied, you are likely to perform much better to please your employer, so that every time you are in a problem, they will say, no, this is our good, faithful employee. We have to help him. Is that making sense? Right. So in this case, simple, again, relationship. One hypothesis there. This leading to that. We are saying the organizational support can have effect on job performance. Right? Employee can perform much better when the organization support them, only when they are satisfied. Are we together? That's what it means. So if the organization supports and the employees are not satisfied, then they might not perform much better. Are you getting it? That's the idea of a mediating effect. There is a difference between a mediator and a moderator. Let me quickly show this, because I see a lot of people make a mistake on this. Right. When we have A and we have B, right, then we have C here, right? We call this a mediator or mediating effects. Right. Same variables, A, B, C. This is now what we call a moderating effect. Right. What is the difference? A mediator is like a go-between. Before we get there, we should pass through this. Is it making sense? Right. But a moderator is more of an accelerator or a de-accelerator. Is it making sense? Right. For example, right, a driver, a bad driver, right, or a poor driver, and accidents, high accident rate. Are we together? No. Poor driving leads to more accidents. That is A and B. Is it making sense? Right? Then what is C? Drunken driving. Right? You abuse alcohol, then it even accelerated. You are poor already. Right? You are likely to be in an accident. Then you even take alcohol. That even accelerates the rate at which you can be in an accident anytime. Are we together?
You're a taxi driver with alcohol.
Yes, a taxi driver with alcohol, or even on drugs. You can imagine what is going to happen on the road if the taxi driver is on drugs. How you will be shortcutting other, even buses, trains, everything. Maybe they would even wish they can overtake an air. Right. So this is what we call a mediator. So note that when you are conceptualizing a model, are you going to make your models, other variables, mediators or moderators? And what does that mean? All right. Okay. Right. Again, it can be conceptualized in this form. 2 predictors, 1 mediator, and 1 outcome. Right? Or these papers, if you go Google Scholar, you punch my name, Richard Chinomona, you can get a lot of these articles. Or you go to ResearchGate, you can download more than 35 articles there that I've written. Right. This is another article, right? 1 predictor, 2 mediators, and 1 outcome. Right? Now, another more complicated one. 2 predictors, 3 mediators, 1 outcome. You can even put 2 more outcomes there. It's up to you as a researcher, depending with what you want to find out. The more the variables and the more complicated it is, the more challenging it is when you are testing the hypothesis. Right? This, I did it as part of a study too for my PhD thesis, and I published this article in Journal of Small Business Management, one of a very good journal, American journal. Right. All right. So that is so far so good with conceptualizing a research model. Have you learned something about the art of conceptualizing the model? Because once you know that, it becomes easy. How do you do it? Start with a research idea. Go and consult the literature. Identify variables of interest, right? After you identify these variables that are unique and peculiar to South Africa, to your research context, then conceptualize a model. Do you want it to make a direct effect? Do you want to make it with indirect effect with the mediators, right? Are you going to focus on the causes, or you want to focus on consequences, or you want to have causes and consequences, right? Right? This is causing this, and this has a consequences like this. Or you want just to have it a direct effect, right? Causes and consequences. It's up to you. Or you want to combine the consequence and causes and a mediator in between. It's up to you. You decide as a researcher. Is it making sense? After you have your model, then now start to think of your title, right? How can I refine my title in a way that it is more appealing to the reader? It is eye-catching to the reader. You know, we are human beings as supervisors. Sometimes you read the title and say, this one. Let me go for jogging first, then I'll come and read. Right? Yet you see another title, Daddy, come and eat, food is ready. I said, wait, this title, I want to just see what it was it. Because it has attracted my attention to the point that I'm forgetting my food. Right? So this is why it's important to come up with a good title. Mind you, a title should be short, precise, and to the point. Don't give a winding title. Are we together? The rule of the thumb is 15 to 18. Some even say 12. But around not more than 18 words. It's good enough for a title. It's not a rule, but it's a general guide. Are we together? Sometimes when the title is too long, the variables are too many, we find one word to stand for a set of variables. Are we together? Which is beside today's class. Okay, on your hypothesis statement, just know that there are different ways of stating a hypothesis. You can state it like there is a positive relationship, positive or negative, right? Positive or negative relationship between A and B, right? That's a one way. Then you can say A is positively related to B. That's another way, right? Then the higher the level of A, the greater the level of B. That's another way. Are we together? But the catch-22 is you cannot alternate the way that you state a hypothesis. Are we together? Choose one and be consistent. That's the rule. Choose one. If you choose one, the first one, there is a positive relationship or negative, then be consistent. If you choose the second one, then be consistent. All right. Okay. Well, I'm not going to get into that. Even yes. You see, on literature, I wanted to let me go back to the model because this is important. I see a lot of people. Let's use the model that we have here on the board. Right? These are our research variables. You have your title, you have your purpose of the study, objectives from all drawn from there. Research questions, everything drawn there. Now you are on literature review. A lot of students don't know what to include and what to exclude in a literature review. Right? These are our research variables. You have your title, you have your purpose of the study, objectives from all drawn from there. Research questions, everything drawn there. Now you are on literature review. A lot of students don't know what to include and what to exclude in a literature review. Are we together? Okay, here is a simple way to know what to include and what to exclude. First of all, I gave the notes, you get it. You get the notes. It's guided by the why do we do literature review, right? So that will explain what you need to include in your literature review. The easier way to know what to include in a literature review is each variable in your research model is a section of your literature review. We do literature review because we want to show the reader that I have read and understood this issue to the point that when I speak or when I write, I can also write authoritatively. So when I read your literature review and say, yes, this person is well read, so it means I may not doubt the assertions you make as you go. Are we together? Right. But what is it that you need to include? You include in the literature review what is important to make the reader appreciate your study or understand your study. Are we together? And what is important for the reader to understand your study is your research variables. Because you are going to test causal relationship between variables. So you need to write something on each of these variables, right? In addition to that, if you have a theory, then you can use that theory to ground your study as part of your literature review, right? I see a lot of people just waffling, thinking that because I came across these concepts, these headings when I was reading about violent behavior, so they just take copies that and paste it. No. If it is not part of your research model, part of the variables in your research model, don't include it. Are we together? You include what is good enough for the reader to understand your research, your study. Okay. Yes.
So when you're exploring the different variables, right, in your literature review,
yes.
I know it's not a topic for today.
All right.
When you
what do you include?
When
what?
you put it in writing,
yes.
Let's say you have different sections
yes.
part of that.
Yes.
Do you then relate the variables to each other, or do you just explore one, and then there will be a section where then you combine the two?
Oh, that's a good question. You see, she's asking that when you are writing your literature, do you have to show the relationships as they are in the model? Right. Very good question. Literature review, you are not talking about the relationships of this conceptual model. That is what you do under hypothesis development. Are we together? There is a difference between hypothesis statement and hypothesis development. Is it making sense? Right. Okay, here is the difference, but it's beside today's class. Now for the interest of CC, let me try to explain quickly, then I move on. Right. When I'm writing my literature review, in this case, I will have alcohol abuse as a section. Then I write a lot about alcohol abuse. Then drug abuse, I write. Then child abuse, I write something. Then violent behavior, I write a section on it, right? There is a template I actually developed on what exactly do you include under each of the variable. Because I saw a lot of students were confused to the point that they don't know where to start and end when writing literature review. You see, they write and write something. When they say, it's enough, right? All of a sudden, it's enough because the hand is now painful, right? Or after maybe it's painful, all of a sudden, but this is nice. It keeps on adding, and at the end of the day, you have 100 pages of literature review. On one variable, how can that be? Right. So I developed a template. I'll briefly just tell you something later. Okay. Hypothesis statement is what we were saying. There is a positive relationship between A and B. That statement. Are we together? But now, when you are writing the actual thesis, you develop the relationship before you what? You test, you state. For example, you have child abuse and violent behavior. This is a relationship under hypothesis statement, under hypothesis development, right? I first show here how does child abuse. The child abuse and in that the other model, or even this in the direct effect. How does child abuse lead to violent behavior, right? So I try to chronicle these stages and the process that child abuse translates to violent behavior, right? This is child abuse. Child abuse. This is violent behavior, right? Then I say, if you do this, that this leads to that is statement. But when you are developing, you are saying when there is child abuse leads to A, and when A happens, it leads to B, and when B happens, it leads to violent behavior. Or child abuse leads to A, and when there is A, it leads to violent behavior. Are we together? These linkages, before we get to B, is what we call hypothesis development. For example, when there is child abuse, the child when he grows up is likely to abuse alcohol. Say it's A, right? And when this student abuse alcohol, he's likely to be violent. Or when the student abuses alcohol, he might even end up abusing drugs, right? And when he abuses drugs, then he will finally abuse violent behavior. You become violent. That is the linkages, possible linkages. So you tell us possible linkages that have been indicated in the literature. Then also tell us in which linkage do you think is applicable in the context of South Africa. You are developing. Finally, after developing this relationship, then you tell us, therefore, based on this aforementioned discussion or foregoing discussion, it can be hypothesized that there is a what? Positive relationship between CA and B. Now you are stating that is a hypothesis statement. Are we together? So you tell us the relationship, you develop it, show how it develops, citing authoritative sources and grounding it in some certain theories that explain that occurrence. Then after that, then you tell us that based on all this, the following hypothesis is postulated. Then you say, H1, there is a positive relationship between this and that. This is the part now you discuss the linkages, the association between variables. But under literature review, you just discuss each variable on its own. What do you discuss there? I'll just mention, I'm not going to explain because it's not the scope of today's class. Yes. Oh, it's all right. 5 minutes. All right. The easier way to know what to include in your literature review, right? I developed four issues that are important to be captured in a literature review. For example, say you have violent behavior. First of all, tell us why is it important to research on this variable? Why is this variable important from the academic point of view, from the practitioner or policymaker point of view? Are we together? So you are justifying why this is of importance. Violent behavior has attracted attention in South Africa from the general community, the public, and also from the academic side. From the policymakers, it has been realized that every time students demonstrate, the universities or the government lose billions and billions of resources, which are taxpayers' money. And equally the same, the general public is concerned, right? And you go on. What you are doing here, you are just highlighting how important this issue has become. Are we together? Right, number one. Two, after you highlight that this thing is important, you can also, from an academic point of view, because of this, violent behavior has attracted also attention from several researchers. For example, give us evidence. Who are these researchers who have found it exciting? Right? Cite. right? Current one, and indicate that really, indeed, this thing is becoming topical, right? The issue there is you're highlighting the importance, because many researchers might not be attracted by something that is defunct. Are we together? So because it's attracting attention of researcher, it must be important. Because policymakers are concerned or business practitioners are concerned, it must be important. Are we together? Right. Second, you have to define the concept. Right. When you are defining it, tell us, how is violent behavior been defined by A? A has defined violent behavior as this. B has defined it. However, C has defined it by this. But how are you going to define it in your study? What we call operational definition. So you give us various definitions to show that you are well read. You know how it has been defined. But you say, however, in this study, violent behavior will be defined according to Genomona 2013, who defined it as, this is because, then you justify why you have chosen that definition amongst other competing, right? That is number 2 definition. 3, give us now empirical research that have been done surrounding that variable, right? Who are those who have researched on this variable, maybe checking on the predictors of, or the causes of violent behavior? Who are these researchers who have researched on this variable, looking at the consequence of violent behavior in society? Are we together? So that's another easier way of covering the empirical study, right? You look at who have looked at the causes, who have looked at the consequences. Each party, you are citing authoritative sources. Don't cite Wikipedia and these Google articles. We need scholarly articles. And try to target those from good journals, right? Peer-reviewed good journals, right? So you make a statement, value-laden statement, you have to cite. You cannot put effect and just leave it hanging. You are not allowed to put your views because you are not a recognized authority, right? This is how you detach yourself from a quantitative study. So you have to say, according to so and so, or child abuse is likely to lead to violent behavior, full stop. In brackets, who said that? Because that's a value-laden statement, isn't it? So you have to cite somebody, right? So that's how you write that part. You have to use a lot of empirical evidence and citing to show that you are well read and you know what has been researched and you have exhausted a lot of what has been written on that variable. Then the fourth issue, how has this variable been conceptualized or measured? Are we together? Right, you remember a variable like trust. Some researchers think that it's a multi-dimensional variable. Some argue and say, no, it can be still a unidimensional variable. When we say that, we are saying if it is a unidimensional, say this is brand trust, right? Then we say, oh, okay, how can we measure brand trust? We develop some instruments, right? Say we have 3 instruments, for example, right? 1, 2, 3, right? This means there are 3 instruments. Okay, the other thing is the technical language. When we talk of measurement instruments, right, or observed variable, right, or manifest variable, right, all these terms are technical terms that mean research question. Are we together? So don't be confused when you read the textbook. I know a lot of my students will come and say, see, now they are talking of a measurement instrument. No, measurement instrument is a questionnaire. It's your question that you were asking. I said, okay, what about this manifest variable? It's again the same question. It's only the difference in what? The technical terms we use in research. Are we together? So that variable we are talking, BT, is what we call latent variable, unobserved variable. So when they talk of unobserved variable, they are talking of this latent variable. Latent, it means you cannot see it. But how do we know about it? We have to ask some questions in order to understand it. Right? Like the issue of love I was saying. Right? How can CC know that Budi loves him? Right? Because love is abstract, isn't it? So, but now, CC has to ask questions that I am prepared to sacrifice everything for my CC, right? Then he said, strongly agree. Then he said, so it means he loves me. He can signify something. So we ask these instruments in order to understand the unobserved variable. So the question we ask is the observed. Are we together? In order to understand the what? Unobserved. The unobserved is also called a latent variable, meaning that it's abstract. Are we together? The observed variable, which is the question we ask, is also called manifest variable. Are we together? These are technical terms, so don't be confused if you come across these terms.